accusing us for collaborating with some leftovers of Nazi men or whatever, which was a big lie. I never participated in any meetings or any collaboration whatsoever. I tried to survive and fought to survive, to fend for myself. But they wouldn't listen to us, especially to me. I was the youngest one. They took us in the building, interrogate us in a very inhumane manner. To be too graphic to explain that here. And after 2 or 3 days of interrogation, they took us to the labor camp in East Germany, and we were assigned to hard labor. For several months, dismantling old German ammunition factories. Of course, I spoke Polish, I spoke German well, and I also learned Russian pretty quick. And living like Russian camp as a prisoner under Russian guards, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Again, hunger was the main subject of all prisoners. Some men were starving to death. They were taken away. We never saw them again. There was a doctor from Austria, who was a very fine gentleman. He looked after me. He was kind of my guardian. And one night he was always talking that he will escape from this death camp. He wanted to persuade me to come along, but I said, no, this is virtually impossible, because we were told right in the beginning, there were German-speaking Russian officers, anyone attempts to escape would be shot. So escape was virtually impossible. And every night they took a count, head count. And then one night, this Austrian doctor, he was nowhere to be found. They all took all the prisoners, were called outside in a big courtyard, guarded by dozens of Russian guards with machine guns. And they were searching the barracks for this missing Austrian prisoner, a former German officer, but he was never to be found. So he did escape. I'm glad for him. How he did it, no one could explain. So after the work was done, we were to be shipped to Russia as well, with the parts, the heavy machinery in the parts that were put in big crates and put on trains, and we too were loaded on the trains, and we were on the way to Russia. I overheard the conversation with the two Russian officers that the train is destined to go for Siberia. I have heard many things about Siberia. 1943, there was a great German Paulus. He had to surrender 1943, not being able to take Stalingrad. He had to surrender. He cabled to Hitler that he must surrender or he will surrender because of lack of ammunition and food supply for his army of 100,000 men. Hitler cabled back. German generals never surrender. He did surrender. They were all taken prisoners and were shipped to Siberia. 100,000 men, this is a fact. Out of 100,000 men, only 5,000 men survived and were later reunited with their families in Germany, whatever. So 95,000 men perished. So knowing the story, I was determined I will not get to Russia, to Siberia. As the train was moving to Poland, it's also in my book, 24 Days Crossing Poland. Just before the Russian border, we had an opportunity. A young man, he was 24, he was older than I am, and we were able, in one night when the Russian came to feed us, which was very seldom, they opened a huge sliding door from the freight car, from boxcar. And suddenly there was a huge explosion in front of the locomotive. The four guards turned around, ran towards the locomotive, and that's where we took the opportunity. We jumped from the train and escaped. Free. We were free at last, but where to go now? We marched only at night. The daytime was impossible, virtually impossible. Poland was surrounded by 47 divisions of Russian soldiers, completely surrounded, which amounted to approximately 3.5 million Russian soldiers. So moving during the daytime was virtually impossible. They could see you moving. So we moved only at night. Usually in the morning, in the dawn, early dawn, in the morning, we were approaching some farmers speaking Polish. They too, some were very reluctant to speak to us, but we convinced them some way that we needed help, so and so. They provide us with some food, raw potatoes, carrots, whatever they could spare, because they too were taking away all the provisions that they had by the Russian army, etc. So I made back again to East Germany, the place that I used to work for the inn, six months before that. The innkeeper was virtually ecstatic that he saw me. He said, "I thought we will never see you again, Gunther." They took me back in, they gave me the job. I worked for them again for almost a year and a half. Of course, not knowing anything about my parents, completely separate from my parents. So I had a plan to live in a free country. There was no future for me in East Germany. And secondly, I didn't want to live in a communistic regime, which was communistic then. I wanted to live in a free country. So I made my plans to escape from East Germany to West Germany year and a half. You couldn't buy any shoes, no clothing whatsoever. There were stores, but they were empty. No supplies were made. You could buy some things on the black market, shirts or shoes or whatever you needed. I remember this very distinctly, buying some used clothing from all the people that had some things that they no longer needed. So that's how I came to some clothing. Then I certainly was absolutely obsessed that I must escape from East Germany. It became a reality. In 1947, I escaped from East Germany to West Germany. Again, walking to the forest, not knowing where I was going. Of course, I had a compass, somehow obtained one. But during the running, I lost the compass, so I was completely confused. But I did find my way to West Germany. I arrived in a very small town or city called Helmstedt, H-E-L-M-S-T-E-D, Helmstedt. It was a very old city. I still remember because there was a old university was built in 1059. 1059. It's a beautiful old city. A small hotel owner took me in, having some experience in hospitality. He gave me a job as a dishwasher, help in the kitchen, and in whatever was necessary in the dining room. And he told me that if I worked for him for 2 hours, he would see that I finished my education, my high school, and he would send me to college in Switzerland, because he was one of the graduates from the Culinary Institute in Switzerland, in Lausanne, which is the French part of Switzerland, before World War II, that is. So I worked for him for 2 years. He was very good to me, just like my parents, his wife and himself. His name was Mr. Dubner, D-U-B-N-E-R, Dubner, with the accent on top, 2 dots, Dubner. They were wonderful people, so he knew even he was losing a good employee, but he also knew that I needed to get my education and go on with my life. I left Helmstedt, went to college in Switzerland, graduated. Unfortunately, after 5 years, I couldn't make it before. A French language was required, and to do that, I had to take before I left from Germany, West Germany to Switzerland, I took 2 years private lesson by Professor Dr. Pohl. She taught me how to speak French, and I'm so grateful for her, or to her. She was a wonderful person, older lady, and her husband as well. He was a professor too, on a former university in Stuttgart or whatever. So they taught me how to speak French, and I really appreciate it. I still think very often. And before I left them in Hampstead, she had a wonderful collection of books, very classic, beautiful books. And she told me, I never parted with any books, but she told me that I was such a good student, and she parted with two of the most beautiful books which I still have. And those two books were printed in 1803. And they are mint condition, and I treasure them still because they're signed by both of them, Dr. Pauls. So after graduating from Switzerland, I went to Paris, London to extend my knowledge in hospitality industries. I work in wonderful, beautiful hotels. I came back to Germany, Frankfurt am Main, and worked for the Steigenberger Corporation. They own several hotels throughout Europe, and that's why I completed my education in Frankfurt am Main. And that was time for me to move on. In 1962, I came to the United States on exchange. When young men came to Germany, I came to the United States. I worked in New York. I joined the Hilton Hotels 1 year, and I went back after 1 year to Germany. And that's why I really found out that my place was no longer in Germany. I wanted to live in a true free country. In 1964, I applied for a permanent visa and immigrated to the United States of America. I went back to New York, joined the Hilton Hotels. From New York, I was sent to Dallas, Texas, at the start of the Hilton Hotel. Again, gained a great deal of experience in hotel management. And from Dallas, I was sent to San Antonio. 1968, when I was privileged to meet our former president, Lyndon B. Johnson. On a very special occasion, I was asked by a gentleman, Mr. Biggs, B-I-G-G-S. He was the president of the First National Bank in San Antonio. He wanted to arrange a very elegant, informal dinner for a very intimate group of people. After we completed all the necessary information, he asked me to keep this confidential because the guest of honor would be President Lyndon B. Johnson. The dinner took place the next day. I was introduced to President Johnson, and his words still resonate in my head. Mr. Skaletz, I've been eating all over the world, but that was one of the finest dinners I ever attended. I said, thank you, Mr. President. So that was the end of the conversation. However, next day, it was my day off. The phone rang, and my little daughter, she called me. That was in San Antonio, late October. It's just like July in Two Rivers. So I dashed to the den, and there was President Johnson on the phone. Actually, he called the hotel, but my secretary told me that Mr. Skaletz was not available. This is his day off. And he asked her, my secretary Judy, would you give me his telephone number? And she told him, Mr. Skaletz has an unlisted number. Oh, that sounds very interesting. Would you mind giving it to me? Of course, she told me later that she couldn't refuse. She gave him my telephone number, that's why he called me at home. So we talked for about half hour, maybe longer. And he thanked me again for the wonderful job I have done. And then he told me that he was playing a surprise party for Lady B. Johnson, and if I would be able to duplicate the menu that he had 2 days ago, so and so. I said, Mr. President, anytime you wish. Of course, I didn't realize that the dessert, the most complicated part of the dinner, would consume so much time, which did 2 days ago. And so after a long conversation, I had the courage to ask him, Mr. President, for when are you planning this dinner? And he said, tonight. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. So that was a big mistake that I said I could do that. So, but anyway, excuse me. I wasn't worried about the dinner, the menu, but most of all I was worried about the dessert, because the dessert was very complicated, it took 12, 14 hours, and I have only about 10 hours to do that. Not quite. But the dinner took place. Everything was splendid. He asked me to call my staff to the dining room. He greeted everyone. He thanked me. Mrs. Lady B. Johnson coming to her table, and she said, Mr. Skaletz, the dinner was exquisite. And the dessert was the highlight of the evening. I said, praise the Lord, because that was very complicated. So from there on, our relationship flourished, and I was invited several times to the Texas White House range, did many other dinners, elegant dinners, and other celebrities and high-ranking military officials such as General Kreitz, three-star General Kreitz from Fort Sam Houston, General Coyner, and many other people were just calling me from all kinds of dinners, and so I was a very busy man. So after San Antonio, I decided to move on. I had a call from the president of the South Bell Telephone Company, Oklahoma City. He said, we have a wonderful operation here. We heard about your background. We need a man with talent and management skills. So after a long conversation, they invited me to come to visit, to see the operation. I went to Oklahoma City. I had a wonderful meeting with the board of directors, etc. So, and I went back to San Antonio. 2 days later, I had an offer, a written offer, and they invited me to come back. So I went back to San Antonio, to Oklahoma City, and they made sure that I accept the offer. And I did accept the offer. We moved from San Antonio to Oklahoma City. So it was, again, wonderful experience. But that was not the end of my career. So having established myself 3 years in Oklahoma City, people were coming and calling me from Lake of the Ozarks, the Marriott Corporation. They needed a man with management skills, and they offered me a very huge job. And again, persuaded me to come for interview, which I did. Of course, a man in the best time of his life, 40 years old, eager to accomplish more, bigger things. So I went to the Lake of the Ozarks, to the Tantera Resort, T-A-N-T-A-R, Tantera Resort. I accepted the position of the executive director for the entire food and beverage operation. Oh, it was a big job, very responsible job. I had a staff of 450 employees. There were 5 restaurants to be managed, 2 huge banquet facilities. We serve approximately 10,000 meals, not cafeteria style. So it was a very interesting job, very time-consuming job. After 3 years, I went to Washington, D.C., Marriott Corporation, and from Washington, D.C., I went to Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha, Nebraska, I went to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We're coming closer to Wisconsin. When I heard the name Oshkosh, of course, it was completely foreign to me, strange name. Never heard of Oshkosh. I heard London, Madrid, Paris, Berlin, Oklahoma, San Antonio, but Oshkosh was not very known to me at all. Only my neighbor finally explained it to me in Omaha. Oh, Oshkosh, Bigosh, that's Bigosh, Everglades Bigosh. I said, what's Bigosh? That's where they do the overalls, etc. So anyway, an offer was made to me. They had 2 restaurants. They needed again men with management skills. Mr. Leahy, the president of the Miles Kimball Company Corporation, he invited me to come to an informal visit. I had a wonderful visit. And before I left Oshkosh, we had an offer. They offered me the position. So soon I was on my move from Omaha, Nebraska, with dog and 2 cats to come to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So then that's where I met my wife, Elaine. It was a wonderful city. I enjoyed it very much. Of course, being traveled all over Europe, many different countries, I found Wisconsin to be a very pleasant place to live. So from Oshkosh, we moved back to Milwaukee, big city again. Stay there in big Milwaukee, big Mig, whatever they call it. And from Milwaukee, finally find a place, the best place, the most wonderful place in the world, Two Rivers on the Lake Michigan. While living in Milwaukee, my wife and I, we came to visit Two Rivers quite often on my day off, if I had one. We used to frequently visit Lighthouse Inn, walk on the pier, where I could take a nap from being exhausted in the big city. Many times I fell asleep on the pier, and unfortunately in the afternoon we had to go back to Milwaukee. But we finally found a place, that is, I found a place in Shoto, downtown Shoto, the Riverfall Supper Club. Our gentleman took us in there, invited us for lunch. When I entered this place, the Two Rivers, into River Shoto, Riverfall Supper Club, I fell in love with the place, and I said, this is the place I would like to work. I spoke to the owner. We had a wonderful conversation. On that day I wore a suit and tie, as I'm actually in a big city, always accustomed to do that every day as a businessman. And he asked me, what can you do? So, what are you doing? I said, I'm the food and beverage director of the Marriott Hotel, so and so. I said, I have no use for a food and beverage director, but can you cook? I said, sure, I can cook. I'm a professional chef. What can you do? I said, Mr. Hawley, anything. Because we really wanted to move away from the big city. And my wife, she loved the Lake Michigan. So we came back in 2 weeks. He made me an offer, and we were on the way to Two Rivers. I accepted the job as an assistant chef at the Riverfall Supper Club. But soon after, 3 months later, he said I was too good to be assistant chef. He wanted me to take over the entire operation, general manager, overseeing the entire operation. And there I was, almost 7 years. So Two Rivers became our favorite town, and we still love it. We are members of the St. Peter the Fisherman Catholic Church parish, and we enjoy living on Lake Michigan. The winters are very compatible with my hometown, Tarnowskie Góry in Poland, because as you probably know, most people know, we are on the 44th parallel, which is around the world, the globe, stretched from United States, Spain, France, Germany, Italy, and Switzerland, and so on. So the climate is very much alike. Snow, harsh winters, blizzards, and of course the lake gets very tempestuous sometimes. It reminds me of the ocean. And every time I see in the summer the car ferry crossing Lake Michigan, there comes the Queen Mary.
Okay, I just want to backtrack a little bit. Did you, I'm pretty sure when I read your book, you got back to Poland at some point.
Yes, good question.
Were you still in Europe at that time? Or
Yes, I
were you
was still in Europe.
Okay,
yes.
when
1959, when I lived in Frankfurt am Main, it was time to make contact with our parents, from which I was separated for 16 long years. It was a very difficult time, but finally my sister, who lives in Berlin, and I was living in Frankfurt, we were able to obtain a visa from the East German consulate as well the Polish consulate, and we were able to obtain the visa to travel to Poland to see our parents after 16 long years of separation. The family reunion was absolutely incredible. We had a wonderful visit with all the relatives that were still alive. I saw my sister, Maria, back, and my brother Bernhard, my oldest brother, my best friend, and the only brother. And so we stayed there for 2 weeks. On the last day of our visit, I still very vividly remember that my father seemed to be somewhat depressed. And I asked my father, what is the matter? Yeah, I'm a little sad because you are leaving tomorrow. And I do not know when are we going to see each other. I said, Father, we'll come back next year. We can continue our conversation, our dialogue, because I too had so many questions that I wanted to ask him. We'll come back next year and we can continue our conversation. I went back to Frankfurt am Main. My sister went back to Berlin. Unfortunately, December 31st, same year, 1959, my father passed away. And that still kind of, it saddens me very much because there were so many unanswered questions that I had. And I still, to this day, I regret very much that I wasn't able to ask my father those questions, and my mother as well. However, my mother told me privately how much my father suffered all the 16 years that we were separated because of the war, or doom, because of the war. So, yes, that makes me still very sad sometimes that I wasn't able to ask those questions that I wanted to. It always reminds me of that beautiful Irish song. The name of the song is The Old Man. So that he too, that young boy that sings the song about this old man wasn't able to ask his father just all unanswered questions. So yes, there are two things I regret very much. The one thing is that I never had the chance to get to know my biological mother. And my father, I really too didn't get to know very much. He always left early in the morning, came home late in the afternoon. Then after, when I was 15 and a half, I left home. So there was not really much to get to know my parents. So that makes me somewhat sad.
Are your brother Bernhard or any of your sisters still living?
Unfortunately, my brother Bernhard, which was my only brother and my best friend, we too didn't have too much communication because during the war we were separated for so long. Although he visited me 2 times in the United States, unfortunately he passed away 4 years ago, so in Germany. He escaped from Poland and lived some time in Germany, West Germany, and just died 4 years ago on Parkinson's disease. So there's only my younger sister, which is Anna, and I. Anna lives in Berlin, and I live here in the United States. Anna and I, we have seen each other for 34 years until 12 years ago when I was able to visit my sister in Berlin. After finally President Reagan told President Gorbachev, Mr. President, take the wall down. So the Berliner Wall was taken down. Then I went to visit, 2 years later, went to visit my sister Anna. But before, we haven't seen each other for 34 years. So the war, World War II, did lots of damage. World War II changed our lives completely. As I mentioned earlier, when Hitler invaded our country, 1939, and 2 or 3 years later, our life changed forever. Never became the same. So.
Okay, I'm going to go jump way ahead again now to your time here at the River Falls Supper Club.
Yes.
You worked there 7 years.
Yes.
Do you have any stories about things that happened during those 7 years? Anything funny or unusual or out of the ordinary that you remember?
Bad and good.
Either one.
While managing River Falls Supper Club as general manager and the head chef, whatever, I had planned all the innumerable weddings, and people still remember me around this area, surrounding areas and towns. what a wonderful weddings they had. Just recently I saw a nice couple in a church, don't mention names, no. And they had a wedding at River for Supper Club. And now, just 2 weeks ago, I saw them in the church with a boy. The boy is now, he's now senior. So it was, I approached him and said, oh, Mr. So-and-so, is this your boy? I said, yeah, this is I remember when he was born, he was only a little toddler. So there are many beautiful stories. I have some waiters that I used to work for me that were juniors in high school. And the seniors, wonderful employees, waitresses and busboys. Some of them still come to visit me. Many of them went to college. Just about 6 months ago, I had a call from Madison. A young man called me and said, oh yes, I remember you. Do you remember me? My name is so-and-so. I am now the food and beverage manager in the place establishment. You taught me the most priceless values of being a good employee and management skills, which I really appreciate very much because I have learned a great deal of you. Now there's a story that one bride and groom had a wonderful wedding. I did the planning, and that happened only once in my entire career as a manager. I planned hundreds of weddings. And there was a wonderful couple that came to me. It seemed like they didn't have much money because they couldn't make any down payments, or if they did, it was a very small amount. The rest would pay you at the end of the wedding. So the wedding took place. We provide all the facilities, the service, and the food, and the drinks, whatever. And the guests started to dwindle. They were just slowly just disappearing. There were only a handful left. And I checked, because there were 3 different weddings on that day. And I checked with them occasionally. And suddenly I come about an hour later to the room where the wedding took place. There were only a handful of guests. And I asked, where's the bride and groom? They left. And I never paid for the wedding.
Not at all.
They just vanished.
Oh, goodness.
Now, there's another occasion. I used to help also many times, on many different occasions, when there was a tight schedule for the kitchen, helping the cooks on the line, providing food. And of course, sometimes also, as far as the cleaning up is concerned. I was helping or showing one of the young kitchen helpers how to clean the top of the oven. And he was watching me, how it's supposed to be done. And I was very careful, and I spilled the oil, cooking oil, on the top of the stove, which ignited immediately and burned my hand pretty badly. But the next day I was at work again.
Nothing ever stopped you, huh?
That's right. But the most dramatic and catastrophic event took place was just before the dinner, on a wedding as well. A kitchen helper brings a huge shaving dish of food, and he tripped on the carpet, and a whole beef bourguignon spills over the carpet. And to reproduce that, it takes some time. So that was a chaotic situation.
So your duties at River Falls, you had to order food?
I ordered the food, I did all the planning, I did all the scheduling, I did all the banquet arrangements, I did the catering. Well, of course, I had a wonderful staff. So I had 5 different hats. And on occasion, like Easter or Mother's Day or Thanksgiving's Day, we will serve 1,400 or 1,500 people in a very professional manner. And some people still remember that. In some occasion, when there was tight schedule in the kitchen and backup in the dishwasher, that's why I came to and roll up my my sleeves, and have the dishwasher wash the dishes. So, yeah, it was a very interesting job for me because it was a variety. I was not glued down to the desk. I did naturally all the paperwork as well, but my main involvement was that the operation ran smoothly.